All right, let's dive right in. We're going to talk about what might be the single most critical skill in investing, but it's one we almost never think about: position sizing. We obsess over what to buy, but the real secret to winning in the long run, it's deciding how much to buy. And yeah, getting that wrong can be absolutely devastating. Just let that sink in for a second. I mean, that statement goes against everything we're taught, right? We spend all our time hunting for that perfect stock. But this says that even if you find it, you can still completely wreck your portfolio. How? It's all about allocation. It's a huge idea, and it's exactly what we're going to unpack today. So, this really is the central question for this whole explainer. It's not about finding some hidden gem or perfectly timing the market. Nope. It's about that simple but incredibly powerful decision of how much capital you're willing to put on the line. And you know what? This one choice is driven more by our psychology than by any spreadsheet. And getting it right is a total game changer. And that brings us right to our first section. It's a crazy paradox when you think about it. An investor can spend weeks, I mean literally months, researching a company. They're digging through reports, analyzing the financials, listening to all the earnings calls. But then, in a split second, they decide to throw 5, 10, maybe even 20% of their entire life savings into it. That split-second allocation decision, that's what we're putting under the microscope. So why do we get this so wrong so often? Well, it's because our own brains are kind of working against us. We are hardwired with these psychological biases that feel like brilliant gut instincts, but in reality, they're just traps waiting to spring, leading to some really, really bad sizing decisions. Let's take a look at the 4 big ones. First up, we've got the overconfidence bias. You know the feeling. You've done a ton of research and you feel this sense of absolute certainty. The trap is thinking, this is a sure thing, I've got to bet big. But here's the scary part. Study after study shows that an investor's highest conviction ideas, well, they often have the highest rates of loss. That feeling of certainty, it's actually a warning sign. Let me give you a quick example. There was this investor, Rajesh. He was completely 100% sold on a tech stock, and his gut screamed at him to bet a massive 30% of his entire portfolio on it. But a system, a logical process, would have flagged that intense confidence as a huge risk, automatically capping the position at just 5%. Well, the stock ended up falling 40%. For Rajesh, that system turned what would have been a catastrophic 12% portfolio loss into a totally manageable 2% dip. That's the power of a system over pure emotion. All right, next up we have the availability bias. See, our brains give way more importance to information that's recent and easy to remember. So a stock that's been on a tear for the last 3 months just feels like a safer, better bet than anything else. We see the headlines, we see the stock chart going up and to the right, and we get tempted to just pile in. But we all know that disclaimer they rush through at the end of the commercials, right? Past performance is no guarantee of future results. And this is really closely related to something called the representativeness bias. This is basically our brain's tendency to stereotype. The moment we hear AI or clean energy, we immediately think growth and success, which leads us to dump way too much money into whatever sector is hot at the moment. The hard reality, though, is that by the time an investment is popular enough to be considered hot, the biggest returns have probably already happened. And finally, there's loss aversion. Psychologically, the pain of losing $1 is about twice as powerful as the joy of gaining $1. It's true. And this fear can push us to take positions that are just ridiculously tiny, like a fraction of a percent of our portfolio. Sure, you avoid the sting of a loss, but even if that stock doubles or triples, it has zero meaningful impact on your wealth. You're avoiding the pain, but you're also avoiding any chance of real growth. So if our own brains are the problem here, what's the solution? It's simple: a system. The only way to fight back against these powerful emotional biases is to have a clear, predefined framework for how you make decisions. A system doesn't have emotions. It doesn't get cocky or scared. It just follows the rules you set for it. Okay, so here's a simple 6-step model that can act as that framework. It's pretty straightforward. You start by writing your own conviction and the quality of the information you have. Then, you really think about the potential downside. From there, you can calculate a base position size and make a few adjustments. But, and this is the most important part, you always apply hard maximum limits. no exceptions. Now, this is where the system turns all those subjective feelings into a cold, hard number. This matrix takes a fuzzy feeling like high conviction and translates it into an objective allocation. But notice something really important here. Even with the highest possible conviction and the best info quality, the final allocation is still only 5%. This is how the system automatically saves you from that overconfidence trap we were just talking about.
Building on that system, let's look at some simple but incredibly powerful rules you can apply to pretty much any strategy. Think of these as the unbreakable laws of protecting your portfolio.
The first rule, and maybe the most important, is this: never risk more than 1% of your total portfolio on any single idea. Now, that doesn't mean your position size is 1%. It means the absolute most you can lose if you are dead wrong is 1%. If you just stick to this one rule, it becomes almost impossible to blow up your account. It guarantees you get to stay in the game long enough to win. The second golden rule is the 10% ceiling. Look, no matter how much you love a company, no matter how right you've been about it so far, you never, ever let a single position grow to be more than 10% of your entire portfolio. This forces discipline. It makes you trim your winners and reallocate that capital, which prevents any one company from having the power to ruin your financial future. And here are 3 other essential rules. First, the correlation rule. Don't think you're diversified just because you put 5% into 5 different big tech stocks. They're probably all going to move together. Next is my personal favorite, the sleep test. If a position is keeping you up at night, it's too big. Period. End of story. No financial analysis is more important than that. And finally, the Kelly half rule, which is a more technical reminder that even mathematically perfect formulas need to be dialed back to account for real-world chaos and our own pesky human emotions. All right, let's talk about a more advanced concept, but it is psychologically just brilliant. It was popularized by Nassim Taleb, and it's called the barbell strategy. It's a really powerful way to structure your entire portfolio to not only manage risk, but also capture massive upside. So here's how it works. You put the vast majority of your money, let's say 80 to 90%, into extremely safe, boring investments. That's your safe bucket. Then you take that small remaining piece and you put it into very high-risk, high-reward bets. That's your risk bucket. The psychology here is perfect. You can sleep like a baby knowing most of your money is secure, which gives you the emotional strength to take aggressive, calculated moonshots with the rest. So, we've covered the psychological traps that are out to get us, and we've talked about the systematic solutions to fight back. But all of this brings us to the most important and kind of paradoxical conclusion about this whole topic. You know, when it's all said and done, it comes down to this one simple truth. A theoretically perfect investment strategy is completely useless if you end up abandoning it the second things get scary. A simpler, maybe even suboptimal strategy that you can actually stick with through thick and thin will always, always beat a perfect one you can't. In this game, consistency is the true holy grail. And that's the question I really want to leave you with. Go take an honest look at your own portfolio. Are your position sizes the results of a deliberate, thoughtful system designed to manage your emotions? Or are they just an accidental collection of bets driven by overconfidence, fear, and whatever was in the headlines last week? The answer to that question might be the most important investment decision you ever make. Thanks for tuning in.